BSA Villiers 119cc Sloper Part 2, and welcome back. So the last video was we did the service the magneto. So this video I want to get onto the carburetor and do the other little bits necessary to give this lovely classic engine a service. So the carburetor is going to be the next thing. Now I'm going to get you zoomed in, we'll have a look. This particular one, as a lot of them fitted to the Ransoms, has got the Amel carburetor on there with the oil bath air filter. It's a cracking carburetor. You can't get much simpler than these. They're an absolute pleasure to work on, and there's very little to them. So there's really no reason why, even if you're not mechanically minded, you can't have a go at one of these carburetors. They really are very, very easy, lovely to work on, like I say, and there's not much to them. So there's very little to go wrong. But obviously, like any carburetor, blockages are going to cause a problem, whether it be stale fuel, dirty fuel, whatever. It will cause a problem. If your engine is running and then maybe it won't run off choke, that's a classic sign for a blocked carburetor. So this video might well be for you. So anyway, I'm going to get you zoomed in. We're going to start on the carburetor, give it a clean out, get that back on, cowling, do the other little bits, and then if we've still got enough time, we'll see if we can get it going. Right, let's have a go. So I think it might be better if I get you around the other side. Let's have a look. Get a proper view of the carburetor. There we are. That's all right. So to get the carburetor off, we've obviously undone the little stay on the cylinder. We've disconnected the fuel pipe. The only other thing we need to do is disconnect the throttle slider. That's quite easy. We just undo the slider screw. And then we draw this out once it comes to the end. Looks like we need a new cable, but there we are. God, that's tight. I don't think that slider is seized up. Normally this would come out quite easily, and it's not. So I think probably the thing to do here, we will take the carburetor off, and then we'll just see if we can gently push the slider back up. So let's have a look in there. Yeah, we can sort of see the slider there. So let's have a look. Right, let's just put a little bit of lubrication in there. Now, we've got to be quite careful not to damage this, so probably screwdriver's not the best thing. Oh, there we are. It's just got stuck. So that's the fella. And the only thing is when we put it back in, you can probably see there's that line that goes all the way from top to bottom, not the one round the other side. We must make sure that it's probably difficult to see. I hope you can see it, but down that side of the carburetor, there's a little pin. Might be quite difficult to see, but it must be that we do line the slot up with that pin, so that the slider goes all the way in and to the bottom. You'll know if it doesn't, because if you start it up, it will go crackers. So anyway, this is the little beauty. So this is the Amel carburetor. So let's push the motor out of the way. So very basic thing. Most of them in this form had this oil bath air filter system. There's no oil in there, but you'd fill a little bit of oil, not much, just past the felts. Some of them had the cylinder-shaped air filter, but this one's the oil bath, the more common one. There's a little choke there. So let's get a tray and then we're going to start stripping it out. Good. Right. I'm going to have a sit down. So, let's have a look. So we'll take the air filter off. A few things that we need to take off is, firstly, we'll take off just the little cap, and that will expose our float and needle. You can probably see, let's have a look. There is a right and a wrong way for this little cap. And I think it is around the wrong way, but I might be wrong. It looks like it is. I don't know whether it really matters. There's a little hole in it, in the top, and it normally faces outwards. Yeah. You can see that little hole where that normally faces outwards. So it's looking a bit grotty in there. Right. So I think the next thing is we're going to undo the little banjo at the bottom where your fuel comes in. It looks like that's been, I don't know what that is, doesn't look like, that should be a fibre washer. Oh God, yeah, that's not looking good. Right, so this is the needle and seat, and we do need to take that out, and we do need to give this a good clean. I was sort of hoping that we could just sort of clean this up with the Carburettor cleaner, but the more I'm looking at it now, I think this is a case for the ultrasonic cleaning tank. So we'll just keep going with that, and if we pull on it, it should release the float, and hopefully that, there we are, full out at the bottom. So that's the little needle, float needle. And the seat is this part, but you can see how awful it looks, and that's a little brass float. So it's not looking too clever. Let's get another spanner to undo that. That's just a little felt for the oil bath. God, it's not looking good. Right, again, it's looking pretty awful. There's a little strainer here, which quite often people leave out. It's a little filter, but if you've got it, I would suggest clean it and put it back in. And that little one there is the main jet. So if it's not running off choke or badly, it's quite likely that's the one that's blocked. But certainly in this case, the whole carburetor wants a good clean out. So we're going to take that out as well. Shouldn't really use pliers, but going to. So that's the main jet, and it is in two pieces. The little jet bit does unscrew. I normally leave them in there. Just see what our choke feels like. That feels all right. Yeah. I think we'll just take the rest of the oil bath filter out. Yeah, I mean, it really is quite bad in there. You can see it's really, it's had water in there, or the fuel has just gone bad, but it looks pretty awful. So I think what we're going to do is, this is really past carburetor cleaning. I think it, or carburetor cleaner itself, I think it does need to go in the ultrasonic cleaning tank. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to put this in the ultrasonic cleaning tank. If you haven't got one and your carburetor is like this, a lot of mower places do. In fact, nowadays, these ultrasonic cleaning tanks, you can buy them quite cheaply, but most of the time, yeah, they're readily available unless you know somebody who can use theirs. But I think this is definitely a case for a dip in the ultrasonic tank. So we'll do that, and I'll be back in hopefully a few minutes. So back from the ultrasonic cleaning tank. So what I've done is I did completely take the carburetor apart. I've taken the oil bath choke assembly off it, made it a bit easier, and it's had a fairly good soak. It's come up reasonably well considering how bad it was. So there's really nothing in this now at the moment. The only thing we need to do, there's a few things that we need to just check are nice and clear, and then we can get onto the jets. So these holes are very important. So probably let's have a look at the first one. So the first one, which goes from the main jet into the float chamber, that one needs to be completely clear. And then if we turn it round, we can have a look in the float chamber. There's another one, it's not the same one, another hole that goes down there. So those two both need to be clear. It is quite important. And with any carburetor job, really, you can't be fussy enough. The more time you spend and the fussier you are, the better, really. So let's just give those holes a quick blow. So I think that's okay. So we can get onto the jets next. So the main jet, which is that one, it's in two pieces. You can unscrew the little main jet and clean it, but it is very, very small and very easy to lose. I normally leave it on there and just sort of clean it in situ. I find it a bit easier. So you can do that. Yeah, jet. Suitable jet, clean that. A little bit. Get the right one without actually making it any bigger. Try that one. That's it. It should go all the way through. This is watchmaker stuff, this, you know. Let's see daylight. Yeah, that's okay. So that's the main jet. We can put that back in. Goes in there. Should really use a spanner, but I'm going to be careful. Doesn't need to be mega tight, that anyway. Got that. I've cleaned the little screen. As I say, they often get left out, but it is a filter. It's good to put that back in. So that goes in. And then we've got our screw that's been cleaned. That can go in. And then the next thing we need to worry about is this is the float needle and the seat. So I have cleaned them up a bit, and you can probably see there's a little hole there. That's where the fuel goes in. We need to make sure that's clear and there's no dirt anywhere near the rest of it. So let's give that a bit of a poke out. As I say, that has been in the ultrasonic tank as well. And then we've got our float as well. It's a bit battered. It's a brass one. It's quite a nice early one. I think what we'll do is we will just make sure that this doesn't have any holes in it. It's not very pretty, but it actually might be okay. Let's just get a little bit of petrol, and we're just going to dump that in some fuel. And if it doesn't sink or we don't get any bubbles, we can probably reuse it. So I'll get you zoomed in a bit. Dirty old screwdriver. So it's doing what it should do, floating. I think that's all right. Obviously, if it started sinking or we've got bubbles, then if you're very good at soldering, you might be able to repair it. Otherwise, it will be a new float. But as I say, it's not very pretty. It's battered, but it seems to be okay. So the next thing we need to do is we need to screw our seat in. The little fibre washer there is actually in quite good nick, so I'm going to reuse that. Do that up. Good. So our float pin needle, you can see there's a little groove in that. This is a little bit bent, this one. And that's where, if we look at the float, there's a right and a wrong way. So the float will be pressed down onto it till that little clip clicks into the groove on the fuel needle. So if you get that right, the float's okay, the needle and the seat are seating, you shouldn't really get any flooding problems. But you've got to try and keep this thing, especially the surface, you've got to try and keep that nice and clean. If you get any dirt on that, it just won't seat. So we drop that in there. What I normally do is I normally use one of these little screws out of the cap to just hold the needle in whilst I put the float in. So what we're going to do, we're going to drop the float in till it just clicks and we know it's located on that groove. So sometimes you can hear it sort of snap on there, but let's just push it down. I think that's it. Let's have a look. Yep. Yeah, I think I've got that in there. So we can put our little cap on. There's Amel. There's a gasket there. It's actually in okay condition, so I think we'll probably reuse that. And the little hole normally goes to the front. The only thing you've got to be careful of is you've got to make sure that the pin locates in the cap. If it goes off center, it will flood. So let's just make sure we've got that right. What I might do is just take this screw out. It's going to be a bit easier to get it on there. So let's have a look. I think I've got it. You can hear it seems to be okay in there. So we'll put that, both the screws in. Then we've got the little banjo there. Quite often that does block up. It's not always very obvious. I've had it where you don't realise it, but it's slightly blocked. And I normally like to just run a little drill bit through it, like so. You don't need to make it any bigger, but just to make sure it's not blocked. Let's blow it through. So that's the little banjo where the pipe goes, and it normally goes sort of to a bit of an angle like that. If you remember, there was a horrible little bit of, I don't know what it was, but some sort of a gasket between having the carb in the tank. I've found another little fibre washer. So put that on. It's about there somewhere. That up. So we're getting there. Simple carburetor. So yeah, the choke assembly and the oil bath, I took that off. Does make it a bit easier in the ultrasonic cleaning tank, and it's worth doing this because you can see the choke there. It's pull on for choke, off for choke. And if you've got any cold starting problems, it could just be the fact this choke isn't closing properly. You can see that this one's working nicely. It's completely closed, and that's what it needs to do. As I said, I've had it before where they don't completely close and you're not getting full choke. So worth checking. And also what you need to just be aware of is the backing of this here. You can, I don't know if you can see, but there's a notch on this backing, and there's also a notch on the casting. They must be lined up. And then if we have a look at the carburetor, we can see there's a little notch there. So they all need to line up. So as I'm going to be doing this up, I'm going to just be looking to making sure that it all does line up as it should when I'm screwing the fastening screw. Got it in line. Right, I don't think it goes any further than that. And the choke feels all right. In fact, you can look inside and you can see if it's working okay. So good, right, I think we're almost done with the carburetor. The oil bath side of it, the felts are actually quite clean, but you'd either clean these felts, that one there, or replace if they're bad. The oil bath would be washed in petrol, paraffin, something like that, and blown out, but that's actually quite clean. So I think we're nearly ready to put the carburetor back on. So let's get back on the mower. There we are, right. So it's quite easy, slips back on there. The tricky bit is going to be lining the slider up, making sure it slips down into the body. Since I started, I've just replaced this cable off camera because it was actually sticky and not very nice. So I found a good second-hand cable. So hopefully this will go in okay. So we're going to try and offer this up, make sure that this goes in first. Yeah, oh yeah, it's okay. Tighten that up. Don't need to go silly with it. Just check your throttle. Feels all right. You really don't want it sticking. So it feels okay. That's fine. So just come out that end and the throttle. Let's put that back in the throttle lever. Right. What we might do is just adjust the cable a little bit. Take some of the slack out, which is done on this little adjuster. Sometimes they have a lock nut on there. This one hasn't. I don't think it's going to come undone. Take the slack out a bit more. Right, put the spring back down. So, let's get on. Right, so we can drop the felt back in. And the retaining felt. Once we know it's running and it's okay, then I'm probably going to just put a bit of oil in the oil bath, and it's just literally to the bottom. It's just covering it normally, but we'll do that once we know it's running and it's okay. So, next thing is the engine cowling. Now, on the slopers, originally from factory, the fuel pipe runs inside the cowling and they're held on by these little tabs. Obviously, if you fit a new bit of fuel pipe, you need to close the tabs up, but don't pinch it too tight that you're restricting the fuel pipe. And it's 3/16, I think, the fuel pipe. That's the size. You can, and I've seen it done before, you can route the fuel pipe. I've seen people route it sort of at the back, and it probably doesn't matter as long as it doesn't end up on the cylinder, rubbing on the cylinder. So this is more or less ready to go back on. We've left the carburetor loose at the moment because obviously we want to get the bolt for the cylinder head in. We'll leave it loose till we've got the cowling mounted nicely. So I don't know whether you can see, but the fuel pipe, I hope you can, the fuel pipe goes through, there's a little bracket on the valve chest, and it goes through there, and then in a minute we'll get it on the banjo. So I'm just going to offer it all up this end. We've got our lower cowling screws. Put those in first. Then we've got our main securing screws. Let's just make sure I haven't trapped the HT lead. This runs between, or is sandwiched between the fuel tank and the engine cowling. Let's have a look. Would really have a nice little suppressor cap on there. We may put one on. We'll see how we go. We'll put our stop. Being very willing. Offer that up over the spark plug. I'm just going to just lightly nip them up first. Do the lower securing screws. Tighten that up. Around a little bit more. Right. So our fuel pipe can go on now. I think I need to probably just chop a little bit off. It's always good to obviously put a bit more than what you need. There's nothing worse than finding it's going to be a bit too short when you get to this point. Normally quite a good tight fit, those 3/16. And we mustn't forget to do the clamp on the carburetor, tighten that. So I did actually clean the original. I was going to put a new spark plug in it, but originally they use either the Champion N5 plugs, and I've just cleaned the original plug. So I think we're going to reuse that. Put that in. Tighten that down. We'll leave the lead off just for the moment. We'll go round to the front of the engine to deal with the HT lead. That's normally clipped in. The little brackets, and then our fuel pipe onto the tap. It's always worth, I did have a look in here. In fact, we'll just see if we can have a peek. Do have a look at your fuel tank, because if there's rust or bad petrol in there, everything you've done to the carburetor today would have been for nothing. But I did look in there and it looks quite good in there. So I don't think we need to do much with that. But I have seen these where the tanks do get quite bad, but it's well worth a look. So yeah, that probably one of the next things you would do is obviously change the engine oil. There is a bung to drain it at the front. The fill is there. we'll just have a look. I think probably what I'm going to do in this case, if it will run, we'll warm it up and then I'll change the oil once it's warmed up a bit. Normally they just sort of start to trickle out of the fill plug. But as I say, if we can get it going, I'll give it an oil change whilst it's warm. So another little thing to look out for and is worth servicing on these, which is a little bit unique to these engine, this type of breather. You've got this lovely little breather on the side, or chuffer, as some people call it. Quite often, if you've got oil coming out of that, it could be one of many reasons, really. Obviously, it could be overfilled with oil. It could be, the oil could be diluted. You could have some fuel in it or something like that. The other possibility, normally when you're servicing one of these, it's worth taking that breather apart and just cleaning it, because sometimes if it is blowing out oil, it can just be that it just needs cleaning and the little top hat is just very dirty and not seating properly. So we'll do that while we're here. The other possibility, if it's blowing oil out of there badly, it could just be the fact it does actually need a set of piston rings and an overhaul. But they're really easy to get out. You just normally need a little screwdriver like this and lift the top of it out, force it out. So you've got that part, and then the bit that we're going to try not to lose, if I turn it over, it should just pop it out, the little plastic top hat. You can hear it in there, and I know I'm going to lose it if I'm not careful. I think I'm just going to get a little bit of grease, and then hopefully I'm less likely to lose that. Fish it out with. There we are. So that's a little top hat breather. So it's worth giving these a thorough clean. We've got the little top hat. Obviously only goes in one way, so goes in like that, drops in. We will clean the inside. A little bit tricky. Make sure the little seat is nice and clean in there. I think we'll just blow a little bit of air. We'll drop our little breather top hat back in. Just drop down. And our little retainer. Let's give that a quick clean as well. Sometimes if you, these do need to be very tight, these. If it's loose and it's come out, you can see this one's been done before. Somebody's pin popped the sides just to make it a bit tighter. It was fairly tight to come out, so I think it's probably going to be okay, but let's tap that back down. So that's the breather. So let's put it back over there. Now the only thing that worries me a little bit about this engine is doesn't seem to have an awful lot of compression. So if we turn it over, well, yeah, I suppose it's not too bad. Yeah, it feels a bit better actually. The other day when I turned it over, it didn't feel like it had as much, but it's obviously been standing for a long time, and it might just be that if we can get it running, there's a little bit of rust on the valve seats. It might just sort itself out. So, right, well, I hope you've got a good view. We're going to stick some petrol in it. We'll see if it leaks first. If it doesn't, then we're going to try and start it. Has already got some in there, but really drained it out. Anyway, let's see. It did look all right, so let's see what happens. So, turn it on. Put the plug lead back on. We're going to pull the clutch in, make sure that that is pulled in. We don't want it shooting off. It's a centrifugal clutch. We'll make sure that's okay. So, right, let's see. I know the recoil is a little bit dodgy. The spring it needs some work on the recoil. We'll probably do that another day. Hopefully there's enough go in it to get it going. So we're going to go full choke, got the clutch lever up. Let's just see what happens. Just going to go and open the door because gas myself. You can hear that lovely little breather sound. There's not many engines that have that sort of rather nice sound to it. That lovely heavy flywheel. I mean, it's an absolute pleasure. So let's turn it off, see if it will hot start all right. Well, it's not that hot, but let's see if it starts all right. You can really hear that breather now. Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed it. A real piece of quality British engineering. BSA Villiers 119cc sloper. What a lovely thing it is. So I've got to do a couple of things which I will do next off camera, and that's change the oil. As I said, it's quite easy. We've got our bung there to drain it, and then I'll obviously fill till it just trickles out. The engine's got to be nice and level. I've got that to do, and I've got some work to do on the recoil. It's not quite right. We might do a video on that at some point, but that's not quite right. And then obviously, as I said, we need to just fill the oil bath air cleaner. But as I said, they don't need much. You just literally fill it just past the felts, and then that's job done. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did working on it. It's a real pleasure. And if you've got a BSA Villiers sloper, I hope you have success in your works. Thanks for watching.